Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good couple of times before. This is going to be review number 7 on the channel involving these guys if memory serves me correctly, but it's also going to be the first dark beer that I try from them as well, which makes it quite interesting, and it's also a style of beer that I've been getting really into I guess over the last 2 years or so. So fingers crossed this makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So for this one we are going to head through to Glasgow once again, Yoker to be specific. I always smile when I think of that, the sketch with Dee Dee on the bus freaking out because he's going to Yoker, the Limmy show. Contextual cues and all of this. Every time I do a review from this brewery I have to mention that. But for this one then we are going to have a look at another beer from Overtone Brewing Company. So this is review number 7 from these guys. As I say, my very first time trying one of their dark beers, but this particular beer is called Wake Up. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, and this one is a coffee stout, apparently with Colombian coffee beans in it. So yeah, really curious to see how this beer turns out. This is my 5th review during this particular cycle of Scottish beer reviews from Overtone Brewing, and I do have 2 other darker beers to review from them as well, but we'll need to see if we can get those done before I have to go back to Sweden. Those beers will sit obviously quite happily until I come back over here in February again, but I hope we can get them done this time. But yeah, 7.5% coffee stout, this one, my first dark beer from Overtone Brewing Company, and as I said to you, these guys have been doing some great beer recently, so fingers crossed this one follows on in the same vein as the other ones that we've had as well. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Overtone Brewing Company before, and you will see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am enjoying a little bit of time at home in the motherland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Overtone Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So Overtone Brewing Company, as I've told you many a time before, are based in Glasgow, Yoker to be specific, and they were founded back in 2018 by Bo Wang, who is originally from Beijing in China. So he'd been a home brewer for a number of years before founding the brewery, and apparently it takes its name from his love of music. And from what Peter the Clueless Drinker was saying in one of his reviews, apparently the artwork that you'll see on these beers is inspired by, you know, some of the strobe lights and things like that from techno music. So yeah, pretty cool actually. I do like the artwork you get on these Overtone Brewing beers. It's very distinctive actually. It's quite retro almost as well, I would say. But when Bo started up the brewery, he hired Dan Miller, who's from New Hampshire in New England in the northeast of America. He came in as the head brewer, and he'd previously worked as a head chef but also as a brewer in England, New York, and also in Scotland for 6 Degrees North. Lovely Belgian style brewery incidentally that I recommend you try. But also involved at the brewery is Martin Conahan, who worked in the craft beer scene in New Zealand for a number of years, but he takes part in the brewing, and he also does a lot of other things around the brewery as well. But the brewery itself can be found in the New Albion Industrial Estate in Yoker near Renfrew and Clydebank, just over to the west of central Glasgow. And the brewery don't actually have a fixed range of beer, or so they say. You do actually find quite a few of the popular beers are rebrewed quite often. The Ouija IPA, the Oft, the Tribute was a popular one as well, although that has a different name now. It's the beer formerly known as, it's called now. So yeah, I need to try Oft, Ouija, and the beer, the Tribute beer. I need to try those 3. I do want to get those on the channel at some stage. But yeah, the beers that turn out to be popular, they will redo them. And one of the beers that you'll see me review in a future video is a rebrew actually, because it was very popular. The Dusty Miller Imperial Stout actually, that was another one that I got in this box from Overtone Brewing. But as of January 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 60 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I say, they are pretty damn prolific, so you will see more beers from these guys appearing over the next little while. But yeah, they seem to do a fairly diverse array of styles as well. So far, the first beer I had from these guys was the Rwandan Coffee IPA, then it was the Azaka New England Double IPA. This time when I've been home, I've had the Iman IPA, which was a really interesting farmhousey one, the Kalista Pils, which was a bit more like a Munich Helles, then we had the Churkas in New Zealand hopped New England Double IPA, and then most recently it was the Kanye West West Coast Double IPA, which again was very nicely done. So this is review number 7 from these guys, if I remember correctly, that we've done. Yeah, review number 7 it will be, and the first dark beer as well, actually. So yeah, this should be very interesting. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Overtone Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And of course, you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little closer look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. Again, very, very nice. I think I do like the. This is one of the darker cans that I've come across from Overtone so far, but I think it just goes together very, very nicely. But it says on the side here, Overtone Brewing Company, belter of a coffee stout, roasted and ground fresh from Glasgow's The Steamy, masterfully cold brewed right in the fermenter. So yeah, from what I gather, it said on the website that it was Colombian coffee beans that are in this one. The hops in this beer are Magnum, quite a popular American bittering hop. The malt base in this one is quite impressive. Maris Otter from England, chocolate, coffee malt, it's oats, roasted barley, and Carafa number 3 in it. Carafa, of course, a malt from the Weirmann maltery, trademarked I believe, and they are from Bamberg over in Franconia in northern Bavaria in Germany. I've been to the maltery actually where these are made, but Carafa is a really, really nice malt, like well-fired bread, well-fired bread crust, brown bread, just very, very smooth actually. I love Carafa malts, and Maris Otter I really enjoy as well. So really impressive malt bill in this one, and apparently it has an Edinburgh yeast in it actually, which should be quite interesting. But yeah, 7.5% coffee stout this one. As I've told you in previous reviews, I love coffee stouts, and that comes mainly off the back of the beers that Dugas Brewery back over in Gothenburg did with Hunter and Sons, the Key and the Sidamo Dimtu. Their coffee beans are one of the most interesting adjuncts that you can use in beer because they've got such a level of complexity, just like hops tend to have. So when it comes to coffee, it's all about the height, the altitude at which the coffee is grown. They call it MASL, meters above sea level, and apparently the higher that you grow the coffee beans in altitude, the more likely you are to get fruity and fruity and aromatic flavours and things like this out of it. So they're really, really interesting. I'm curious to see how the coffee bean turns out in this one. But yeah, 7.5% coffee stout this one. Wake up. I think this should be very, very nice actually. So yeah, without further ado, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. 440ml can, and I bought this one directly from the brewery. So let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. But yeah, Overtone Brewing Company, definitely one of the Scottish breweries to watch, along with the likes of Vault City. There's some really, really good breweries in Scotland these days. The craft beer scene has kind of got so I left Scotland back in about 2014. It's been 7 years since I lived in Scotland actually, so it's crazy to think about. Let's get the rest of that in here. There we go. But yeah, 7 years since I left Scotland, and over the last 7 years, the craft beer scene, it was starting to get strong. I think around the time that I left, you had Tempest and things like that, but now you've got other breweries like Vault City. You've got these guys as well. Dead End Brew Machine are another very good one, who I think if they can get their own place to brew, they'll be very strong in the next few years. Stewart Brewing in Edinburgh were always very good. Brewtown and Fierce and things like that, they're doing some great stuff as well. But Overtone, definitely one of the Scottish breweries to watch over 2021, and they're getting a lot of hype because I think their beers have just gone down into England for the first time, but they've been around in Scotland for maybe about 2 years or so thus far. But yeah, great stuff from these guys, so make sure you try them if you get the chance. So yeah, as you can see with this beer, and as you kind of expect from a coffee stout, this one has poured a lovely dark sort of ebony rosewood colour. You can see that when we poured this beer it had about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of very light beige head on this one, kind of fawny colour, but that's faded away to pretty much be nothing, which is quite interesting. There's no wheat in this beer though. Wheat usually helps when it comes to head retention, but yeah, there is just a little bit of a kind of thin foamy layer around the edge of the glass there, and a few sort of foamy wispy tufts on the top of the beer there. But yeah, it certainly looks the part for a coffee stout. It does, when you put the light through it, show that it has a little bit of haze to it. It's got a wee bit of that kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge, but yeah, nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of appearance when you consider what style it is. 7.5% coffee stout beer, this one. So yeah, I think this should be a really interesting one. So yeah, nothing surprising about its appearance. Let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. Ooh, that does smell very nice. So straight away you're going to get the coffee out of this one, stating the obvious. And the coffee that comes out of this one is really nice actually. It's quite an earthy coffee, I think. So yeah, you can get earthiness, citrusiness, floral notes, and red fruits and all of these kind of things from coffee. As I say, one of the most complex adjuncts that you can put in beer actually. You know, it's just crazy the amount of stuff. It's crazy the amount of things you can get from coffee and things like that. Just mental, absolutely mental. But yeah, straight away with this one you're going to get that big earthy, smooth roasted coffee actually, and it comes across very, very nicely. It's like a breakfast stout, this one, like a robust stout actually. But yeah, that jumps out of this beer at you straight away. So yeah, lovely, smooth, lovely, quite roasty earthiness to this beer for sure. You can get some coffees that are very smooth in their earthiness, and you notice this with different coffees from different parts of the world. You've got Indonesian coffee, African coffee, you know, South and Latin American coffee as well. South and Central American, I guess I should say. Latin America is the whole thing. But yeah, the aroma of this is absolutely lovely. So yeah, the earthiness does have a little bit of just kind of roasty robustness to it, if that makes sense. A nice little roasty edge to it, bit of coffee smoothness underneath, but the coffee for me is just quite robust and just a little bit kind of almost bitter in a sense actually. But there's a little bit of aromaticity to it as well, and you might even get a wee tiny hint of a kind of citrusy quality, and a little bit of a red fruity note as well from the coffee bean in this one. We are only talking about the coffee beans so far. We've not even explored the other parts of the beer so much, but the coffee does absolutely dominate the aroma in this one. But yeah, underneath the coffee, of course, in this beer you get a nice, you can definitely smell a little bit of that well-fired bread crusty note, which will be the carafa coming out of it, carafa number 3. I think carafa number 3 usually is a little bit sweeter as well, but you get some nice roasty, well-fired bread crust in there. There's a little bit of a kind of brown, sort of almost, I don't want to say rye bread, it's not quite sweet enough to be rye bread, but there is a little bit of a brown bready base to this beer as well. Definitely a few elements of a brown sugar to this one. I would say like a sort of toasty and dry but still quite sweet caramel coming out of the beer. Absolutely, that'll be the Maris Otter that's giving you that. It's crazy, this one. It's very, it's a lovely smelling beer. This it's a breakfast stout, absolutely. You do get this kind of sub-style within the stout category these days, the breakfast stout, and this one is absolutely one of those. I love, as I say, I love coffee stouts. I've not had too many Scottish examples, but these guys do know what they're doing with coffee. If you get the chance, I would highly recommend that you try the Rwandan Coffee IPA. That's a beautiful, beautiful beer, that. And another very good one. Coffee IPAs are one of these things that are quite strange because they just work. They really do just work. Wizards and Gargoyles from Modern Times. I think it's actually brewed at Stone, sorry. Stone are the home brewery, and then Modern Times are the guest brewery. But yeah, the aroma of the malty and adjuncty side of this beer is absolutely lovely. Toasty, well-fired bread crust from the carafa forming the backbone, some brown bready elements to it, definitely a bit of a kind of sweet caramel in there, but it's quite a toasty caramel at the same time. One or two little McVitie's digestive biscuity elements to it as well, but the coffee really dominates that malty side of things, so we're probably going to get more complexity out of the flavour when we actually try the beer than we're going to get from the aroma. But on the hoppy side of things, definitely a little bit of earthiness in there. That's kind of amplified by the coffee, to be honest with you. There's a good little bit of floral aromaticity. Yeah, good little bit of floral aromaticity out of this one for sure. And then you've also got a wee bit of yeah, you've also got a nice little bit of grassiness to the beer as well with this one. I would say that the green side of the beer, it does lean more towards the floral end of the spectrum, to be honest with you, than the grassiness. But this beer also just has a really nice little touch of fruitiness for me as well. I really like how that comes out too. And you're getting, as I say, there's a bit of a red fruity and citrusy note to the coffee. I think the more that I smell of this coffee, the more I start to think it's quite a citrusy note that you get from this one, on top of the other things. But yeah, I really like how the aroma of this goes together, as I say. But on the fruity side of things, for me, this beer, it has, you know, you get a little bit of these kind of plummy, raisiny notes to it. Definitely a bit of that kind of plum and a slightly sharper raisin. There's a wee bit of a figgy note in there, and perhaps, you know, some black currants and blackberries. But it's quite a raisiny, plummy type note I get out of this beer. But it's the sort of red fruity notes you get from kind of dark chocolate. There is quite a bit of dark chocolate starts to come out of this beer the more that you smell it as well. You're like an 80-90% cocoa chocolate. But yeah, this beer, considering what style it is, there's nothing madly surprising about the aroma, but it does come across very, very nicely, I have to say. So yeah, I just want to try this one now, so I think it's about time we get stuck into this. But always take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma, as I say. That's half the experience when it comes to craft beer. Let's go for it with this one. This one is called the Wake Up 7.5% Coffee Stout from Overtone Brewing Company in Yoker in Glasgow. My very first dark beer from these guys. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh, that is nice. First thing I'm going to say about this beer, the mouthfeel is really quite surprising with this one. It's not what I expected. This is a very slick, it's a very slick and kind of silky stout, this one. In fairness, it is 7.5%, so, you know, it's not got the big, I suppose in fairness, the thing I have to remember as well is that I'm used to the Danish, Norwegian, Swedish imperial stouts, and those, I think, in all my experience of craft beer across the world, from New Zealand and Australia to Japan to you know, to the States and Canada and stuff like that, and all across Europe, I'm yet to find stouts that are as thick as the ones that you get in Scandinavia. So that's the thing I think I've always got to remember when I try stouts from different places. I'm used to the massive thickness that you get from these Scandinavian ones. So when I try something like this beer really has a more light and kind of, you know, silky sort of feel to it when I try it. But I have to remember as well, it is only 7.5%. That's the thing you've got to remember. But when it comes to stout beers, to get the mouthfeel up, usually what they do, obviously, there's more malts in the beer, but they give them a longer boil, because that caramelises the sugar more and just makes the beer feel a little bit thicker. You can do things like add more oats and more wheat into the brew and stuff like that as well to thicken it up. But yeah, this one, at 7.5%, I have to say, this is a very, very kind of slick and silky stout, actually. But then you have to remember, in Scotland we're very, very proud of our tap water. We always say this, but that you can really feel the cleanliness of the Scottish water in this beer. And it's quite strange again to think about that, because this brewery are from, you know, quite a populated, quite an urbanised area, you know, Yoker, Renfrew Paisley, it's in the heart of Scotland's biggest city, you know, but still it has that cleanliness to it, and that sort of amplifies that silky kind of quality that it has. But that's the first thing that strikes me about this beer, is the mouthfeel, to be honest with you. That's the first thing that comes into my mind about it. But as I say, I think every beer reviewer that you watch is going to have a different point of reference. So maybe the English guys, and I think a few of them have reviewed this beer already. I've not watched the reviews because I don't want to be influenced, of course. But yeah, maybe the English guys will, from their point, they might say this beer is a little bit thicker. But I find this one quite a light and very slick stout, to be honest with you, but the Scandinavian ones are just crazily thick, definitely. But it's a lovely, the flavour in this beer is absolutely lovely, I'll tell you that right now. It's very, very good. So yeah, let's try and break it down for you and describe it properly. So yeah, the beer, I think the more that you take this one, it does develop. The coffee has a lovely kind of smoothness to it as well. This is a beautifully done beer for 7.5%. It's a remarkably easy drinking stout as well. That's the other thing I would say. But I really, really like this. This is very nice and very, very flavourful actually. So yeah. Let's try and break down that flavour then. It's quite, in some ways it's quite straight shooting. I think this the non-adjunct part of the beer, I think, is very straight shooting. It comes across like that, but the coffee is the thing that really adds the depth to the beer, if that makes sense. But straight away with this one, you can feel the carafa forming the backbone of the beer. In the middle third of your palate, you can feel that roasty, toasty, bread crusty quality. That just blankets the middle of your palate. And as you go towards the back third of your tongue, those roasty, toasty black malty elements just come out a little bit more. On top of that, on top of the middle third of your palate, you get a smooth bit of a kind of brown bready character in there, which I think is really, really nice. That's the carafa all the way. I love carafa malts. But yeah, in the back third of your palate, as you go across that border to the back third of your palate, the beer, it just, even though you've got those roasty, toasty, bread crusty notes and the well-fired bit at the very back of the palate, it does just feel a little bit smoother, and I think that'll be the yeast that's doing that, to be honest with you. So that's an interesting point to make about this beer as well. In that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, it's definitely got a sort of roasty, toasty element to it. Yeah. Yeah, it's really got it's got a lovely sort of it really just, the smoothness that comes out of this beer the more that you drink of it is great actually. If I was blind tasting this beer, I would have thought there was a little bit of wheat to it just to add to the smoothness there, but on the back third of your palate you can really feel, you can feel the oats kind of from about halfway in that middle third of your palate to halfway along the back third of your palate. You can just really feel the oats sort of smoothing the beer out, if you like. So yeah, the base across the middle and back thirds of your palate, that's the carafa, the roasty, toasty, bread crusty quality. On top of that, you've got some of the nice kind of brown bready notes in there, and then about halfway between the middle third of your palate to the back third of your palate, you've got a nice kind of smooth oaty quality in there. And then on top of that nice oaty quality, that's where you're getting the coffee coming out of this one. So yeah, the coffee does have a good little bit of roastiness to it. It's got a good earthy component as well, which I think is really quite nice. But yeah, really nice kind of roasty component to it. But yeah, and the earthiness I think builds in this one the further you go into it. There's a wee bit of floral quality there as you move in the coffee, as you move further forward into pretty much about the border region between middle and back third of your palate. It does have a little bit of aromaticity to it, and there's a wee touch of citrusy quality comes off of that as well actually. So I like how this one, I do like how this one goes together. So yeah, this one for me, the coffee side of this beer is very nice. There is just a wee touch of a citrusy note to this one, maybe a little tiny hint of red fruit, but I don't find the coffee in this beer to be overly fruity, to be honest with you. One of the things that I'm noticing about this beer too is that if you go, the further you go into the aftertaste, you can feel a little bit, if you go to the very centre of your palate, you can feel a little bit of the kind of brown sugary notes from the Maris Otter coming out. The Maris Otter, I think you can feel a little bit of a brighter bready quality in there as well on the kind of on the kind of on that middle third of your palate there too. So I really like how that comes out. I think the Maris Otter shows itself a little bit more, and you get some of the depth to the coffee in this beer the further you go into it. But there's no, for me, I don't really get chocolate out of this beer. You can pick up a bit of a chocolate in the aroma with this one, but that doesn't really come out in the flavour for me. But the complexity of this beer is in the malt base of this one, and it really is, again, very, very nice. But I think what we've said so far, other than to say that if you go to the front corners of your palate then diagonally back, there's a little bit of a woodiness to the beer. So yeah, you do get a little bit of just a slightly woody depth to this one, which is very, very nice. I think that covers the malty and adjunct side of this beer, come to think of it. It feels like a little bit of a ramble, what I've just said about it though, but because it's quite layered and everything, there's quite a few things going on with this beer, but it really is just solidly done. I think it is a very layered beer, I would say. So yeah, thumbs up to Overtone for the malty side of this beer. This definitely makes me very curious to try their higher alcohol, the two higher alcohol imperial stouts that I have from them actually. But on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness to this one. As you move further forward, it develops a little bit of herbal quality, and you can feel that as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, it just gradually gets more kind of floral and aromatic. There's not really a spiciness to this beer, but it's definitely more kind of floral and aromatic. Round the very front curve of the palate, the beer's got a little bit of a lighter kind of grassiness to it, and then behind the front curve of the palate, as I always say, that's on the front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, I really do like how this one goes together in that sense as well. The fruity side of this beer just adds a nice little bit of you know, depth and complexity to the beer. So yeah, when you take the beer in, it's got a wee bit of a kind of raisiny sort of note to it. I don't know if I'd go as far as plums. It's not quite as it's not quite oily enough to be plums, to be honest with you. So it's a little bit, it's got a wee touch of a raisiny sharpness to it. And you feel that just towards the back of that front third of your tongue, but again, as you move further forward on that front third of your palate, it develops a little bit of a kind of figgy note to it, and you can feel the smoothness, the coffee. It's interesting because the coffee, I think, and a bit of the well-fired bread crusty sort of thing from the carafa, that really spreads forward underneath that the fruit on the front third of your palate there. You do get a bit of that kind of bitter side of the beer coming out, but still quite smooth. But yeah, back of that front third of your palate, there's a wee bit of a raisiny note. As you move further forward, it gives you a little bit of a kind of figgy quality. Then on the very kind of tip of your tongue, it gives you a little bit of a sort of black curranty. It's got a wee bit of that, no, not black currant, I would say blackberries. It's got a little bit of that oily kind of blackberry vibe to it. Then the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, it's more the smooth coffee, the earthy components of the coffee, I think, come out of this one, and also that well-fired bread crusty sort of thing from the carafa. So yeah, it's a really nice beer, this one. For a 7.5% stout, it is stupidly drinkable, but it's very, very well executed, this one. I think it would be nice to see these guys do an imperial coffee stout at some stage, but yeah, for a lower alcohol stout, and 7.5% is still, you know, fairly high for a lower alcohol stout. You know, some breweries might even consider this an imperial stout. Some of the more traditional breweries would consider 7.5% more of an imperial stout. But yeah, this is just very, very nicely done, I have to say. So thumbs up to Overtone Brewing on this one. The mouthfeel then, to round off the review. As I said to you, this beer has a real kind of silky sort of smoothness to it, a real sort of silky mouthfeel. I would describe this beer as being, it's light-bodied for a stout, but in terms of the beer generally, I'd say it's right in the middle of the spectrum. The carbonation's very smooth, a very silky and smooth mouthfeel to it, like I said, and it's really kind of easy. It's very easy drinking, this one, for a dark beer. But yeah, it has that kind of typical cleanliness, if you like, that a lot of Scottish beers do. The quality of the tap water, and again, it's strange to think about because these guys are in quite an urbanised area. But yeah, in terms of the bitterness of the beer, what would we say about this? in terms of the bitterness of the beer, this one has about 50. I think it's somewhere in the region of 50 or 60 IBUs, but quite a lot of the bitterness I think is coming from the coffee rather than the hops in this one. I think you'd be lucky I think if there's maybe about 30 or so IBUs from the hops. I think most of the bitterness in this beer is coming from the coffee, to be honest with you. The malt and I guess the carafa as well. So the malt base I think is more bitter than the hops, than the hoppy side of the beer, to be quite honest with you. Yeah, I'm unsure about that. Remember, the IBUs, I'm never sure whether you count the how would you say, whether you count the malty and adjuncty side of the beer when you're talking about the bitterness of it. But yeah, the bitter side of this beer, I think maybe 40-50 IBUs overall, but there's not a lot coming from the hops, maybe about 25 or 30 IBUs I would think. But yeah, the malty side of the beer, it does get a little bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste. It's got a nice smoothness to it as well, and just a little degree of sweetness, which I think is very, very nice too. A little bit of fruitiness to the beer, as I say, a little bit of raisiny sharpness when you take it in, and then a very light kind of juicy quality and smooth juicy quality the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. But this is a really very interesting beer. It's one of the most quirky sort of lower alcohol stouts I've had in recent times, but yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me, and it certainly does make me curious to try. Getting a little bit of gas off this now. It does make me curious to try my two Imperial Stouts that I got from these guys as well. But yeah, the Wake Up Coffee Stout, 7.5% ABV from Overtone Brewing Company in Yoker through in Glasgow. A really, really nice beer, this one, and kind of crazy drinkable for a 7.5%er. So yeah, looking forward to trying the Dusty Miller and the Dark Banter that you'll see a little bit later on. But let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Overtone Brewing Company. We will return to these guys fairly soon, like I said. And as always, you know, please check out my social media, check out Overtone Brewing Company, and I bid you some very good beers. Until then, these guys, one of the Scottish breweries to watch for sure. But thank you again for watching my videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Wake Up Coffee Stout with Colombian coffee from Overtone Brewing Company in Yoker through in Glasgow. Lovely, lovely beer, this one, and I do look forward to seeing more coffee stouts from these guys in the future. Slange, skull, cheers, and do also make sure you check out the Rwandan Coffee IPA. Beautiful, beautiful beer. Cheers.